So here is the Cobb V2 inlet. Much bigger opening. Have to be careful on the side here. There is very little clearance between the intake and the adapter for the intake hose going to the intake there. If you have aftermarket Cobb injectors with the extension harness there to plug in the injector harness, make sure you tuck everything under there. There won't be any room here. It's a very tight fit with the power steering pump. So actually the steering pump wiring just under rubs against this, and here there's definitely, you can see here, I push, get a bit of light. So it's rubbing against the power steering. So what I do is I take a piece of that's a tire tube that I cut, and I'm gonna slide that here in between the power steering hard line and the hose to make sure the rubbing doesn't cause any damage. Otherwise, plenty of clearance here under the intake. This is an intake with stock fuel rails. On the back here, things are a bit tight again. I mean, they are already tight with the stock hose. Here we have the insert. I'm gonna remove my vacuum line. So it gets really tight with on the STi block with the that's the return for the venting hose, and so those clamps get really squeezed in between those. It fits, but it's really tight. So this car has a 34mm turbo restrictor. So the turbo restrictor slides into the here into the turbo. So the turbo restrictor comes about up here, which makes the kind of enlarges the or forces the inlet hose to be extremely close. Okay, you can see here. It's really hard to see, but so as you can see here, the hose rubs against the intake manifold, and that's due to the restrictor. Kind of you can see the end of the restrictor that is just before this hump in the intake, the lip where the bolt is. So it's definitely extremely close there, and the same thing what I did on the other car is put a piece of tire tube just here in between to make sure I wouldn't have a hole in it. But otherwise, great fit and finish. It's tight. It's definitely a tight fit, but it does fit. And with the extra protection here against the upper steering pump, and if you have a restrictor against the intake there, that should be lasting a long time. So the inlet V2 actually comes out a little bit further this way, which pushes this inlet hose further into the Cobb intake here. So there's very little clearance left there. Actually, it's, if you still have the stock snorkel, it hits pretty bad with the cone here. So it's really tight. I could obviously cut a bit this one down to reduce the problem, because we have, every time we go to tech inspection, we have to remove this so that they can get the camera inside to check the restrictor. So this is a hose that has to come out very often on our cars, so I might just shorten it down so that it's a little bit easier for the crew at tech. So here with the boroscope, we are going inside the Cobb Inlet V2 hose. So a really large opening coming up here on the right. So that's where the pre-steam pump is, and you can see there's no obvious deformation of the cylinder, even if it's a very close fit. And here in the back you can see our turbo with the restrictor in front of the turbo, and that's why you can see a little bit more of the wall pushed to the left. It's because of the turbo restrictor that is obfuscating a bit and pushing the inlet against the intake there. So here's what it looks like with the tire tube in between to protect from the rubbing. Same thing in the back here. I'll try to get the light in here. Not sure if we can see it from the top. Yeah, you can see the piece of tire tube here sticking in between, and to protect from the also here the new inlet V2 from Cobb, new inlet hose. It fits really nicely. Here I put some extra protection because it's really tight with the alternator, and I had to route my fuel line to go on the back there so I would have enough clearance with the hose. It's a bit larger than the previous one I had, and so when you have an aftermarket fuel rail, here I have the IAG fuel rail. If you try to come directly at an angle, it's going to rub against the hose, so I just went and do a 180 degree to come back on my fuel line here. New timing belt, new Cobb inlet hose here, the V2, some protection for the rubbing against the alternator, and some more protection in the back with the turbo restrictor. But otherwise everything running nice and smoothly. Now just have to get some E85 and tune it on E85.